Sit quietly. Respectable people are gathered here. My father hissed under his breath, his hand tightening on my arm. The chandeliers above the banquet table sparkled like frozen stars. Laughter floated through the Millionaires' Gala, the annual event my father called his social battlefield. I sat beside him, wearing a simple navy dress that apparently made me look like I worked there. When I reached for my glass of water, Dad leaned toward the man across from us, a silver-haired CEO, and said with a forced laugh, "She is my foolish daughter. I apologize for her. My son is the real pride of our family." The table erupted in polite laughter. My cheeks burned. I smiled faintly, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, the humiliation hit like ice. The pride of the family, my brother, Ryan, grinned as if he'd earned the title by existing. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my entire month's rent. He didn't look at me once. I wanted to stand, to walk out, but something made me stay. Because tonight wasn't just a dinner, it was my event. I'd worked for 6 months with the organizing committee, quietly, anonymously. They didn't even know I was his daughter. And now, as the host walked to the microphone to announce the keynote speaker, my father straightened in pride, expecting to hear his business partner's name. But instead, the lights dimmed. The screen behind the stage lit up with my photo. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer said, "please welcome the lead designer behind tonight's charity technology initiative, Ms. Lena Ward." My father froze, and the entire hall rose to applaud. The sound of applause echoed through the grand hall, sharp, rhythmic, undeniable. My father's fork slipped from his hand. My mother blinked in confusion, whispering, "Did he just say Lena?" I stood, every heartbeat louder than the last. The host continued, "Ms. Ward is the visionary behind the AI-led sustainability platform that raised over $8 million in global donations this quarter, transforming how corporations give back." Heads turned toward me, phones lifted, flashes flickered. For a moment, I saw my father's face, pale, mouth open, eyes darting between me and the screen behind the stage where my credentials glowed in gold. I walked toward the podium. Each step felt like reclaiming years of silence. When I reached the microphone, the applause softened into stillness. I smiled, calm but deliberate. "Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to finally see the faces behind the numbers we've been building for months. I never thought the girl who was told to sit quietly would one day be standing here, speaking to all of you." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Warm, genuine. Not mockery this time. Recognition. I glanced toward my father's table. He wasn't clapping. His hands were still, gripping his napkin like it was holding his pride together. My brother avoided my gaze completely. When I stepped off stage, the CEO my father had been courting earlier stopped me. "You're his daughter?" he asked, eyes wide. "Yes," I said softly, though I think tonight he's still deciding if that's a good thing. The man laughed. He should be proud. That presentation was brilliant. I smiled faintly. Maybe he will be someday. Behind me, my father still hadn't moved. The applause went on without him. When I returned to the table, no one spoke. Even the sound of cutlery from nearby tables felt deafening against my family's sudden stillness. Dad stared at his plate. His earlier confidence, the loud laughter, the bragging was gone. He looked like a man who had been caught unprepared in front of an army he didn't know existed. Mom tried to recover the moment. "That was impressive, Lena," she said in a voice too careful to be genuine. Ryan, my brother, leaned back in his chair and muttered, "You could have told us." I smiled politely. "You could have asked." His jaw clenched. "You embarrassed Dad in front of everyone." "I didn't embarrass him," I said, my tone calm, measured. He just miscalculated who he was sitting next to. Dad finally looked up. "This wasn't your place, Lena. You made me look like a fool." I met his eyes. "No, Dad. You did that the moment you called me foolish in front of strangers." The words landed like glass shattering. The table next to ours had gone quiet, pretending not to listen but clearly hearing every syllable. Then the event coordinator approached with a bright smile. "Ms. Ward, the press would like a quick interview." They're especially interested in your partnership with Harpertech's green energy division. The irony hit instantly. Harpertech was the very company my father had spent months begging to meet. I glanced at him once more, his face a mixture of disbelief and something I hadn't seen before, fear. Of course, I told the coordinator, standing. I'd be happy to. And for the first time, my father didn't tell me to sit quietly. He couldn't. The flashing lights from the press corner felt surreal. I'd spent years hiding in the background of my father's world. Now I was standing in front of the same cameras that once ignored me. Ms. Ward, a reporter said, your platform has been labeled the most impactful philanthropic tech innovation of the year. How did you develop something that outperformed 3 corporate think tanks? I smiled, measured but natural, by not underestimating the people who are usually dismissed. The reporter tilted his head. Anyone in particular? I met his gaze evenly. Let's just say, sometimes you have to be called foolish before you realize how capable you are. A few of the journalists exchanged knowing glances. The words had landed exactly where I aimed them. The interview went viral within hours. By morning, major outlets carried headlines like, Daughter silenced at gala becomes unexpected star of the evening. Tech visionary Lena Ward leaves corporate elites speechless. Back home, my father's phone exploded with calls from investors wanting me on future projects. When I stopped by the family estate the next evening to drop off documents from the foundation, the atmosphere was painfully quiet. Mom was arranging flowers that didn't need rearranging. Ryan sat scrolling on his phone, pretending not to see me. Dad finally emerged from his study, slower, smaller, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it. You humiliated me, he said, not with anger, but something worse. Hurt pride. No, I said gently. I showed them who I am. You just never thought that would be someone worth seeing. He said nothing. Just turn away. And for once, it wasn't me who looked small in that house. A week passed before I heard from my father again. No calls, no texts. Only a cream envelope slipped under my apartment door early one morning. It was his handwriting. Precise. Controlled. The kind he used for business contracts. Inside was a short letter. Lena, I said things I can't take back. I thought strength meant control and that appearances mattered more than authenticity. Watching that room rise for you, it reminded me of who I used to be before ego replaced gratitude. You've become everything I failed to be, not just successful, but respected. Dad. I sat there for a long time, letter trembling in my hands. I'd waited my whole life for his approval, and now that I had it, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt sad. That night, I met Daniel, the gala coordinator, for coffee. He'd become a quiet friend through it all. You're not celebrating, he said, noticing the letter beside my cup. I shrugged. I thought recognition would fix the pain. It doesn't. It just makes it louder before it fades. He smiled faintly. It's not about fixing it, Lena. It's about realizing you don't need their applause anymore. The next morning, I framed the letter, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. People can change, but only when reality breaks through pride. And for once, my father didn't need a stage or a crowd to see me. He finally saw me in silence. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a message that made me pause mid-meeting. Dad. Sunday dinner. Just family. I'll cook. I almost laughed. My father, the man who believed kitchens were for staff, was cooking? Still, curiosity won. I drove to the estate that evening, the same house where I'd once felt invisible at every table. When I arrived, the dining room looked different, smaller, somehow warmer. My mother had traded her diamond-bright centerpiece for simple candles. My brother, Ryan, avoided eye contact but managed a stiff nod. And then my father came out of the kitchen, apron and all. Lasagna, he said, awkwardly proud. It's probably terrible. It wasn't. It was imperfect, uneven, a little burn on the edges, and it was the most human thing I'd ever seen him do. During dinner, he cleared his throat. I spoke to the board. We're donating half of my shares in Ward Enterprises to your foundation. I froze. You don't have to. I do, he said quietly. You taught me what real value looks like. Not profit, not reputation, purpose. Mom smiled weakly. Your father's been reading every article about you. Ryan muttered. Yeah, he even cried at one of them. Ryan, Dad warned. But his tone was gentle this time. For the first time in my life, we weren't playing roles. We were just a family. Imperfect, scarred, and finally real. When dinner ended, Dad walked me to the door. I still wish I'd said this sooner, he said. I'm proud of you, Lena. And for the first time, I believed him. A month later, I was back in my office when my mother called, her voice trembling. Your father collapsed during a board meeting. He's stable now, but the doctors say he needs rest. I drove straight to the hospital. Seeing him hooked to machines shook me in a way I didn't expect. The man who once looked indestructible now looked small. Mortal. He smiled weakly when he saw me. Don't look so scared, kiddo. I'm not going anywhere just yet. But he handed me a sealed folder. Open this if anything ever happens to me. Promise me. Don't talk like that, I whispered, gripping his hand. He closed his eyes. I've made peace with a lot of things thanks to you. He recovered slowly, and life went back to its strange, cautious normal, until one afternoon, his lawyer called me in. Your father updated his will, he said gently. He wanted you to know before the rest of the family. When I opened the document, I couldn't breathe. Half of Ward Enterprises, the same empire I was once unworthy of, was now in my name. The lawyer added, he also transferred ownership of the family estate to your foundation. Said he wanted the place to mean something again, not just symbolize ego. That night, I visited my father. He was reading quietly, his favorite pen tucked in his shirt pocket. You gave me everything, I said softly. He smiled. No, Lena. You gave me back my conscience. And for the first time, the air between us felt weightless, like all the ghosts of disappointment had finally been buried. 6 months later, Ward Enterprises hosted its annual charity gala, the same banquet where I'd once been told to sit quietly. Only this time, I wasn't in the shadows. The host introduced me as Lena Ward, CEO of Ward Foundation, Innovator of the Year. The same chandeliers glittered above, the same guests filled the hall, but the applause that followed my name wasn't polite. It was thunderous. As I stepped on stage, I saw my father sitting in the front row. His eyes were wet, his hands clapping harder than anyone's. My mother dabbed her eyes quietly beside him. Even Ryan looked proud, truly proud. I spoke calmly, my voice steady despite the emotions swelling in my chest. I was once told to stay silent because respectable people were gathered. I believed that for too long, until I realized respect isn't something you're granted. It's something you earn by standing tall, even when others try to make you small. The room rose to its feet. A standing ovation that felt like closure, like vindication, like peace. Afterward, Dad hugged me in front of everyone. You were never my foolish daughter, he whispered. I was the foolish father who couldn't see you. Outside the hotel, the night air was cool against my face. I looked up at the city skyline, the world finally quiet. The revenge had never been about humiliating anyone. It was about reclaiming the voice they tried to silence and using it to build something that mattered. And as I walked to my car, applause still echoing behind me, I realized